Good morning, everyone. I'm a leading researcher in the Highscope consulting firm, and we've just won a very reasonable reward of making a sustainable innovation, which is a innovative, a new innovative idea for a crash barrier. To this, we present the Piercer, an innovative crash barrier that not only empathizes with the community but also embraces a form of safety unlike any other. First off, I must explain what design thinking is. This is a non-linear process where there is a process involved in empathy, defining, idea, ideating, prototyping, and testing for an innovative creation, a new, sustainable, and revolutionary piece of item. Though it's not a very one way or one through process, when you empathize for the idea, you can jump to creating the idea, or you can go back to defining. But then, making the prototype, you also have to understand if the prototype is uh, beneficial for the community, both in a humane way, and in a safety way. And finally, it all comes down to testing. If the testing does not prove the hypotheses and does not benefit the community, then we must go back to the start and continue on this non-linear process. Secondly, I must explain the scientific method, which is in contrast to the previous method, design thinking, this is a linear process in which you develop general theories and then you make observations, then you think of the questions, the needed questions that needed to be answered, and then you formulate a hypothesis and you test this idea, and you gather those data, and if it does work and if it does prove to innovate and create a marvel idea, then you've successfully done the process of scientific method. Had you gathered data that isn't correct and isn't suitable for your idea, then you must refine and alter and expand and reject the hypotheses. In our method, we are using the scientific method alongside the design thinking, where we would, after researching, construct our hypotheses. Then we would proceed with our first set of tests with our prototype. If the prototype does not succeed, we will troubleshoot again and redo the procedure and retrace our steps in order to correct and further benefit the community. Our hypothesis is quite simple. If we can measure the momentum through velocity and mass, then we can determine whether the crash barrier successfully reduced the impact force of the car. We are challenged with a plan to develop a mock-up model for a sustainable car crash barrier. Our team, consisting of 2 engineers, will be building a model of a crash barrier that will lower the impact force felt by a car, and we will continue to calculate that impact force by using momentum, the mass and velocity gathered from our experiment, our procedure. So to do this, we are creating a solid and effective mock-up crash barrier design with the pass car set by Pasco, which is a dynamic cart system with 2 carts, a few magnets, a few rods, one frictionless track, and a few sensors. This unique system is able to derive data, to gather data from the sensors directly to our computer. Very effective and very simple, in which we can later on get the velocity as well as the mass, which is an addition, in which we will be using a scale to measure, and consequently we will find the momentum of the tests that we will make. So we are also trying to further improve our innovation by implementing a sense of sustainability, where we will be using very easily findable materials in Highscope labs. For this, we will present to you the lapelsa, which is comprised of a few sticks cut into a conal shape, 2 sponges of different color to make it unique, a few cotton buds shabbed and shredded, and then to top it all off, we glue it together and lace it with a tip of double tape, and sellotape. We will also be making a second prototype, which is consisting of only 1 sponge instead of 2, to further benefit our experiment, benefit our research. The big question of our project is, why might visionary leadership cause and or affect transformation? We answer to this by saying, well, we apply the right skill set, and through the leadership values, we are able to transform the current standards for cars and their crash barriers into the proper vision that we have. The project focus question is how my action as a visionary leader, when applying design thinking and engineering design process, can contribute to transform a safe and a sustainable future vehicle. We not only apply scrutinous and rigorous process of the scientific method, we also empathize through the design thinking to fully embody the spirit of a righteous and visionary leader in leading the research for innovative crash barrier. The results are very, very surprising. Not in the way that it would disprove our hypotheses, but rather prove it so much to an extent that it's quite novel. You see here that the first prototype with the 1 layer of sponge contributed to a velocity of 0.26 meters per second with a weight of 18 grams. The second prototype with 2 layers of sponge made a final velocity before impact of 0.22 meters per second with a weight of 20 grams. So, very simply saying, the results that we made, the results that we gathered, the results that we analyzed have proven our hypotheses. The 2 crash barriers not only decreased the impact force of the 2 cars, but also made us able to realize and give more further suggestions for future experiments or future research, much as like this one. The first prototype, had about 5% more weight than the one prototype with the prototype that had 2 layers of sponge. The 2 crash results had resulted in a difference of 0.11 gram meters per second momentum of a difference. The first prototype being being slightly more destructive than the second. Though by me saying slight is a matter of life and death when you hypothetically say it's not just a crash barrier used in a pass car set, but a human life who could possibly die. So, for further suggestions, this experiment, this research, our way of doing the method was quite unorthodox. We used the magnet of the track to accelerate the car instead of using gravity, which is quite inconsistent at times, and in most of the times we had to correct and reposition the car quite often. So um, I advise all of you, to any who wants to try this experiment, to instead use the elevated aspect of the track to accelerate and move the car, and let the gravity do its own thing. Aside from that, we had the tip of the crash barrier broken many times because it wasn't quite strong yet. So in order to fix that, I suggest you layer more double tape. But aside from that as well, don't forget to not use double tape. Don't use. I advise you not to use double tape in sticking the car and the crash barrier together. The plastic from the ABS plastic from the past car might be slightly ripped and slightly scarred from that. And that is it for the project and our research from the HS consulting firm by the leading researcher. Thank you for listening.